This is a very interesting gathering today, a gathering to breathe new life to agriculture and to give critical support to our farmers and fisherfolk who are, if I would like to stress, as my point of view and perspective, farmers and fisherfolk are the country's backbone and lifeline. Without our farmers and fishermen, we will not be able to produce the food that we need to survive. Without our farmers and fishermen, we will not be able to achieve food security. Without empowering our farmers and fishermen, the Philippine economy cannot hope to reach developed nation status in the next decade or decade and a half. We are therefore thankful to the Catholic Relief Services for taking the initiative in this project. We thank the United States Department of Agriculture for lending critical support for the same. This project is a key example of the power of public-private partnerships for development, to bring back the primacy and the importance of our farmers and uplift their quality of life. As a largely agriculture nation, we cannot turn a blind eye to the fact that over 60% of our labor force is directly and indirectly employed by agriculture. 34% of labor is directly employed by agriculture. 18% of GDP is agriculture-based. But if you include agri-industries, agriculture, agri-industries, and related services contribute almost 50% to the country's GDP. Focusing on uplifting the lives and raising the incomes, therefore, of half the nation's population should be a priority if we are to reach developed nation status in 15 to 20 years. And yes, during our lifetimes. It is unthinkable that over the last 30 years, growth in this sector has been stuck at just over 2%. Not enough to cover our annual population growth. Kaya naman pala, hindi po tayo maasenso. Mahigit sa kalahati ng ating ekonomiya ay hindi umuusad. Nearly half our country's economy does not move forward. If this country, if our nation, continues to ignore the plight, continues to ignore the welfare, continues to ignore the needs of half of its population, we cannot hope to be a strong nation. This explains in part why we continue to lag behind, while our neighbors like Taiwan, Malaysia, South Korea, and Thailand have zoomed past us. They focus on agriculture modernization and on improving the quality of life of their farmers and fisherfolk. In Thailand's Ministry of Agriculture, clearly part of their vision, for example, is to increase farmers' incomes from 40 to 50,000 baht in the next 7 to 10 years. In China, in the 1970s, the average income of the farmer was 160 yuan. 30 years later, the average income of the farmer is 6,000 yuan. Can you imagine the impact on their economy because of the incomes that have been increased in the agriculture sector? Today, the average age of our farmers is 57 years old. Senior citizen na po ang ating mga magsasaka. When I was in Sinaloa, Laguna, awarding our farmers there, 5 of the awardees came up. One was 61 years old, the other was 64, the other was 74, the other was 78 years old. Our new generation of farmers are nowhere to be found, precisely because we are asking them to take a vow of poverty if they go through farming. Today, the average income of our farmer is 23,000 pesos a year from agriculture. Nearly 60% of our farmers or rural population's income does not come from farming. It comes from off-farm incomes. Clearly, these figures are unacceptable. Today's launch of the partnership that we have made in this event therefore represents a new paradigm in agriculture and a departure from the old ways. Doing things over and over again and expecting a different result each time, Einstein said, is insanity. Forgive me if I speak in the vernacular. Kumuha na lang po tayo ng bato, ipukpok na lang natin sa ulo natin. Dahil kung yun din ang gagawin natin, maya't maya, uulitin at uulitin natin, walang pagbabagong mangyayari. In English, I said, let's get a rock hitting on our heads, and it's going to give us a headache if we choose to do things the same way, because it's not going to change things. Tapos na po ang dating gawin. Where there used to be a lack of regard and concern for agriculture, we now see a coming together of stakeholders to save agriculture and push it forward on the national agenda. Where there used to be lack of coordination and communication, we now see greater efforts towards working together, working closely, and achieving results. I was fortunate enough to have been to a CRS project partnership in Nueva Ecija, the Kalasag Cooperative. In 2008, when they were cooperativized, their yield of onions was 60 tons. In 2011, after 4 years of support from the CRS, from the local government, from microfinance groups, their yield became 240 tons. 4-time yield in a period of 4 years. And what are the stories of the farmers? Yung isa, sinanla sa kanya yung isang hektarya. Yung isa, nakabili ng isang hektarya. Yung isa naman, o lahat sila, may motorsiklo o kaya tricycle. At lahat sila, natubos na yung mga alahas ng kanilang mga misis dito sa alahera. In a period of 4 years, their incomes increased. And when we were there, because of the partnership with Jollibee Foundation, the private sector, they are now going into a partnership with CDO for the processed meat. And that is an example of how we can move our farming communities forward. And that's why farm is critical and very significant. Aside from farm, other programs are running in parallel to achieve broad reforms in the agriculture sector. As mentioned earlier, we launched Sagip Saka last January. Sagip Saka in English is Save Farming. Our advocacy that aims to achieve sustainable modern agriculture and food security by transforming agriculture communities to reach their full potential, improving farmers and fishers' quality of life, and bridging gaps through private-public partnership. Sounds like farm. At present, we have invested 100 million pesos from the Priority Development Assistance Fund to pilot 25 projects throughout the country. We are investing another 100 million before the end of the year. With the support of more sectors in government and the private sector, we hope to gain more support for the Sagip Saka program and replicate this nationwide. At the heart of Sagip Saka is the drive to bring farmers and fisherfolk out of poverty, raising their incomes, and giving them the respect that their sector deserves. With the belief that empowering our agriculture sector with financial stability and disposable income will make a huge multiplier effect in our economy. When this 60% of our labor force, directly and indirectly employed, can afford to live better lives, they will find other goods to purchase. You can imagine the factories of DVD players and TV sets going on overdrive because the farming sector wants to have these goods. In Thailand, the #1 vehicle of choice is a 4x4. And that is because that is the #1 choice of the farmer. Another farming community in Quezon, because of integrated support from the local government, from the private sector, and the non-government organizations, their incomes have upped tremendously. And critical here, and the story is, the father's problem is that the son is always borrowing the 4x4. That's a nice problem. In other words, coming together is necessary if we are to move the sector to a new direction of progress and development. We therefore need to look at the challenges of agriculture from new lenses, with new mindsets and perspectives, with a new vision in mind. We must be willing to dare, we must be willing to tackle risks. We must be willing to think differently, think outside of the box. We need social innovation and a revolution in agriculture in order to move forward. FAR, just like Sagip Saka, represents precisely this kind of social innovation. So we are pleased to witness this new beginning for our Mindanao farmers and for communities that depend on them. In the end, my office is willing to tie up with the other initiatives of FARM so that we can provide the necessary funding for a number of your programs and projects in synergy. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga sa kanila.